Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep.
Welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Real, Chatting with Catherine. We are going to have a really nice exploration today with one of my favorite people, Norma Cowie. She is an absolute pioneer in the metaphysics. She's been involved in metaphysics for over 40 years. She began her journey in 1964 studying tarot, and today she still uses it for psychic readings and teaching others how to read and understand philosophies of life. And Norma has written numerous books which you can get on her website, and they're just great little tool books that are easy to comprehend and to apply, which I think is the most important part. Is getting the understanding is one thing, applying it is what will get you to the wisdom yourself. And Norma has a great deal of wisdom. Her website is www.normacowie.com. Norma has for 11 years, she was the producer of the Psychic ESP fairs, which were produced in many cities in the Pacific Northwest in Canada and the US. She also was a regular, she had a regular TV show titled Tomorrow's Fortune in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And for 4 years, she was the host of a cable TV show called Exploring the Unexplained. Norma has also appeared on many radio and TV shows as a guest, and often answering questions using her tarot cards and so forth. She does private sessions, she does workshops, and she's got a lot of information to share. She's done her work, and she has explored into so many different aspects of the metaphysics that, but at the same time, is grounded and is able to help us to apply that in real world. She speaks real, and she speaks English in a way that we can comprehend the message, because it's a very powerful message, I find, and very practical, which I like. And Norma's also the self-published author of 8 books, so 3 on the tarot, and then she's got several others on like spiritual principles of wealth and so forth. So if you're looking for that kind of information, she has a absolute fountain of knowledge to share. And like I said, you can access that on her website. You can go to the guest page of letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com and read Norma's full bio. And I am looking forward to working with Norma in the future, and I am looking forward to what we're going to chat about today, because I think you'll find this very interesting. It's a lot of fun. Norma's a lot of fun, very youthful in her wisdom. So let's get at it. Let's go meet Norma. Thank you. I am so thrilled to be able to sit down with Norma Cowie today. Many of you who've been watching and listening to Let's Get Real Chatting with Catherine have heard Norma's voice on the shows many times, but I thought it would be great for us to have a personal, face-to-face kind of connection so that you know who the voice belongs to. So thank you, Norma, for joining me today for this Skype video. It's great.
You're very welcome. I just hear my phone going in the background here, so it's like it's been, for some reason today, it's decided to ring off the hook. I have no idea why, but anyway, it will stop ringing in a moment. It will.
It's interesting how the energy seems to flow, and people. It feels like you send out this wave and people are starting to say, hey, I need to talk to Norma. You know, it's almost like an energetic calling.
Right. Well, I do have a workshop coming up in the middle of the month, too, on channeling to connecting and channeling your guides. So also people are beginning to phone to register for that, which is really nice. One always likes that when you've got workshops going, to have people register for them, you know.
Exactly.
So,
well, and you know what, I wanted to kind of get real personal with you today, because although you are teaching these metaphysical principles and understandings and have been doing so for many years, like you're like the pioneer in this industry, in this mindset. But I know you're getting busier, and I'm wanting to kind of get from you, what do you see that's, from 20 years ago to now? Because it certainly feels like we're in a new place. It's not just about teaching, it's about really applying, or that's how I'm feeling, and I wondered if you're getting a sense of that now.
Well, just to hang on a sec, I have to have a drink of water here. I'm just thinking back 20 years ago. I started teaching long before that, before 20 years. And as I often say, when I first started teaching my intensive, it was one weekend a month for 8 months. It took me 6 months of that to convince people that they created their reality. Today, that same course I teach over 6 months. I can do it even over 4, because people walk in the door already knowing at least the concept they create their reality. They know the things about guides. They know that they have auras. They know all sorts of basic things that 30 years ago, we'll say, or even more than that, 30 years ago, people just weren't aware of that. And it was funny that you say it's been a long time. I actually was referred to as a legend the other day when someone introduced me.
Oh, you are!
Norma Cowie, she's a legend, I'm going, oh my goodness, yeah. Well, it was just I was on that forefront. And, I had a lot of exposure through radio and TV and being a producer of the large psychic fairs in the Pacific Northwest. I had a lot of exposure, and I've got a lot of news clippings to prove that point. But then came the years following all that, which was much slower as I worked with my own development. Well, I always was committed to my own growth. I always felt the most important thing was my own growth in relation to my spirituality, to my own growing, etc. Now, have I always been perfect? No, I have not. And I often think back to my original tarot teacher who told me in a reading, this is what he said to me: you will be a great reader because of your life's experience. Well, I was 22 with 2 little kids, and I remember thinking, what experience? Like, this man's nuts. I'm like with 2 little kids. Like, what experience? Now, my life has taken me. People keep saying one day to really write my autobiography. Now, large parts of my life is in my books, but there's many parts that are not. And it's like, yeah, I've experienced most things. It's weird. Weird things have happened to me that have put me into circumstances that, on the whole, that one circumstance would be one person's whole catastrophe in their life. Well, I've had many of those. The ups and the downs. Lovely big home, lots of money, to very simple home with very little money. Like ups and downs, ins and outs, legality issues, relationship issues, of course. But through it all was the growth process that went on, because each time I'd have to come back into, okay, what was working and what wasn't working. So today, what I teach and share, mostly is like sharing with people, is about things that I know work for me. And if they work for me, they're going to work for people, because I'm like everyone else. I would read a book, or I'd hear a teacher of some kind, and they would say, do this, that, and the other, and I'd try it, and I would think, this isn't working. What's wrong here? What's not, this picture's this. So I would go in and I would dig it apart, and I would find where it didn't work or why it didn't work as it was presented. And that's been good. So anyway, getting back to your question, from 20 years ago to now, what I think is the basic collective consciousness processes of spiritual or metaphysical development and growth is commonplace now. Commonplace. And yes, we still get pieces of information coming out that makes a sort of a rise and fall in it. But it's people are being aware they are responsible. It was funny, I had a friend phone this morning asking about, he has a teenage child he has trouble with, and all of a sudden he said, why is he doing this to me? I said, hold it. You're being a victim here. He's not doing anything to you. He's got his own difficulties, and this is the outpicturing of his difficulties. Get with the program kind of thing. So he said, I only had a few moments because I had somebody in the house, and so I had to, couldn't stay long. Just tell me what the issue is. So anyway, oh right, yes, I have been a victim, haven't I? Yes. And I think even that, people are beginning to aware that if you're going to play victim, your life's not going to work too well. So it's really, really important that you don't play victim, that you begin to assume responsibility. And that's the biggest shift I've seen, is that people are now willing to assume responsibility for their lives. Now, I remember when I came to the conclusion I had to accept 100% responsibility of everything. I tell you, there are times when you do not want to do that. Like, it's like, oh, do I really have to assume? Can't I just say it's their fault? But you know that everything you create is part of you. When you know that, it's like, okay, where am I sitting with this? What is this about? And that is the biggest single thing I've noticed, is people are really aware of victimhood. A lot, not saying everyone, a lot. And also to the willingness to assume more responsibility. I'm not saying that everybody's out there accepting 100%, because I know that isn't true. But they're more willing to accept responsibility. And I found in the readings now, people usually, as a psychic reader, as well as all the other things I do, is that people used to always think that I was going to tell them events of what's going to happen. And I built my practice, you might want to say, on helping people to figure out an answer for what was going on. In other words, assume responsibility, do the things that you need to do to get to where you want to go. And now people phone I mean, I don't even really have to explain that I'm not, quote unquote, a fortune teller, that I don't really deal in events, but I'll deal with how to get your life on track. And so that's how I built my career, you know.
Norma, do you find that people are now starting to have less of a hard time with the concept, you know, victimhood? When you talk about that, I know that many times when we say things, you're creating your own reality. In the past, you know, maybe even 5 years ago, if you said you were creating your own reality, immediately people would get on the defensive. Are you saying, you know, that's the old thing about the woman being raped, you know, us blaming her? Do you find that people are starting to understand that's not what we're saying? We're not condoning inappropriate behavior. We're saying circumstances, something in you has opened you to the possibility of things happening. Are people able to understand better now, or how do you when you talk about victimhood, how do people?
I don't think on that concept that they understand a lot. I think there's still a lot of information they still have to have on that, because most people, they always go to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
You know, like to try and counter, because there is a sense, I was going to say an innate sense, but I don't really want to say that. There's a sense that most of us, when things are not going right, we don't really want to assume that responsibility that that it's us. But you know, I have a saying, and I say it's not the event that's important, it's how you handle it. So it's not important. Like, it is important, but you know, it's not the end result. This is not the main thing of the event. It's like, what are you choosing to do with it? That's going to show you growth. When things go wrong, and they do go wrong sometimes, what do you do with that? Do you run away in the corner and lick your wounds and do all those things, or do you say, okay, now what do I need to do with this, and move forward? And I think that's experience. I mean, you don't expect a younger person to know that yet, but with experience and awareness that going in the corner and licking your wounds does not get you where you want to go. And I found many years ago, when I used to do life readings for people, that different people have problem areas at different times in their lives. Like, some will have it in their childhood, some will have it in their middle years, and some will have it at their end years. The end years are tough. I had mine more, the biggest issues probably came in my more latter years than the early years. So you've got a different learning phase. Also, there are some very specific learning patterns that show up, and some people go through them really hard, and some people seem to skip over them. You know, there is that whole thing in there that some people are just charmed lives. Easy lives. I wasn't mine this time around, but I'm really good considering. I have loads of great memories, being around, done lots of different things. So I understand so much more. The gypsy in me loves to travel and go places, and even now, you know, oh, goody, I'm packing my bag, I'm on the road, how great. So I think a lot of it is the self-exploration. And where was I? Oh, yes, I was just, this weekend, I was just up at a little show that I decided I would do, and this lady comes up to me and says, "You look like you have spunk." And
you do.
and I went, "Oh, yeah." She said, "Well, you know, I look around and I see so many spiritual people, but they don't seem to have any spunk." And I said, "Oh, that's because they think that you have that being spiritual or being whole is not being totally you. You know, you get this stamp that you're supposed to be. I don't know what you're supposed to be, but I found that didn't work very well for me.
Pious and righteous and quiet."
But and in some ways, it's what a friend had once told me. It was like a misplaced feminine energy. It took me a long time to kind of get used to that awareness. But it's true. It's kind of like it's like we hold this better than thou, you know. And I have to share this with you because it just happened last week. I've started doing these readings called Soul Origin, where I go back and just trace the soul of the person back. And this particular person who's done a lot of work with me, we went back and we went to, it was like, how it felt for me was where souls originally came from. It was like souls were being created. That's the only way I could explain it.
Wow.
And I'm still living off the feeling that I got there because it was so non-judgmental. It was angelic. In fact, I wrote on her sheet, "Angel of Light" was the only way I could describe it. And it was so clear. It was so and you know, I was expecting to feel love. I didn't feel love. I felt absolutely no judgment, just pure beingness. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I was just speaking to my client the other day, and she said, "Yeah, I've got this phenomenal peace inside right now. It's like everything's okay. No matter what, it'll work out." I went, bang on, because that's exactly right. But it was literally, because one of the things I was taught from my internal teachers was, let go of the belief you're here to learn and could just work to come to understand, and also let go of your judgments. And you know, hundreds of judgments we have all the time. But this energy, when it first sprang into being, was absolutely judgment-free about anything.
Wow.
So if we talk about the fall of the angel and the return, that truly is where we're going back to. Is absolutely no judgment. So when we look at something, what are we judging, and what are we judging in relation to becomes incredibly important.
Well, and the shift of this ages that we're going through right now, we're really noticing a lot. I'm noticing a lot of people becoming more spiritually aware. But and the reason I wanted to feature you in this is because you've also done your work. And this is, to me, is the blending that's coming in. Yes, there's spiritual principles. You read them, you maybe even can say, yeah, that makes sense. But there's a difference between that and knowing it, internally knowing it. Like, I think you have to do it that way. You have to get the knowledge, which I can say comes from books. Then you get the experience of it, and then comes the wisdom. Right. And what I'm finding, and I'm not, this is not about judgment, but it is an observation that there's so much coming out now, teaching where people haven't done their work. And I do mention this a lot because I want the public to understand it's not that the person's bad, and it's not that their intentions aren't good. It's just that do your own discernment to see if the person who's giving you the teaching might be solid, but their application of it might not be. Do you see that? Do you see the?
I've always seen that. It's been a constant thing forever. It's like, especially when what they call the New Age movement started in the 70s, 80s, about when I first came along. There was a lot of people throwing, actually it would be later than that, would have been in the 80s, 90s, that would throw these comments around that would basically drive me up the wall, because they never stopped to think what it really meant, because they didn't understand the basics of metaphysics.
Yeah.
See, when you say you create your reality, but they say you create your reality by how you think. Well, it's more than that. You create your reality by how you think, the feelings that go behind the thought, how you respond to all that. So you create your reality by how you think, feel, and respond. But you don't hear of those other two, basically. And they would flip all this little catchphrases, and I would stop and think, what are you doing? Like, what are you saying? And of course, no one wanted to hear. I felt like a voice in the wilderness. And then the second thing, they began to go on a lot about affirmations. And then I used to sit there and take these affirmations apart. And I would think, well, that's not what they really want, number one. And number two, the affirmations themselves are always to show you or give light to that which does not agree to what it is that you're actually affirming. It's not about stuffing inside this particular saying. It's about finding internally what does not agree with that. That is the great value of affirmations. Again, never hear about it. The other thing I'm noticing right now, one of the things when I first began my spiritual study in more of a metaphysical way was this. We did a lot of work around the subconscious. You never, I wouldn't say never, but I am not hearing from the new phase coming out that we have three minds to work with. Our conscious mind, which is the driver of our lives, our subconscious that houses everything and is the power, and our superconscious, which of course is our connection to the source of being, or God, if you will. So we don't, I was saying to someone the other day, I'm not hearing that whole thing about the subconscious. So people are beginning to do a lot more conscious work and how to create your world, do this, that, and the other, and all's well, but they're not taking care of what's gone in before.
Well, I think
transformation work.
We're a bit of a, we've been trained to be kind of consumers, and it feels like to me, when The Secret came out, people got really attracted to, oh my God, it can be so easy, which is okay, it can be easy, but I think there was a belief that got created that if you just change your thinking, you can have a life of, milk and honey, basically heaven on earth. And I do believe you can have that, but I also believe that you have to do your work. Because I personally, consciously have been aware of my journey for the last 12 years, and I'm not there, and I'm constantly seeking, to learn more, to do more, to heal more. There's always something comes up, or it comes up in a new way, and I just really want to help people to understand that it feels like we need to be doing two things. We need to do our spiritual work because we are spirit, but we also need to live in this world. So we need to find a way to bring the two together. And I feel like some of the teachings are actually creating a wedge. Like, it's like you're either spiritual or you're practical. Well, no, we're here to be physical.
Right.
So how do you do? Are my observations similar to what you're seeing, or?
Well, I believe the same thing. I think that what you're manifesting outside is definitely a picture of where you're at. And those things that we don't want in our lives are things that we do have, and the things that we don't have, that we want and we don't have. It's like we need to become more aware of that, for sure. And I really believe that that the body is connected to the earth, and listening to the body and being aware of the body and enjoying physicality is very, very important. And then your spirituality, which will take you on. If you don't have your life figured out from a practical, physical point of view, you're going to do it again. There's no doubt about it, because you're not going to be, because you haven't learned how to be with your feelings at all. And I see more and more of that. It reminds me of how they used to teach way back in the ancient times, where everybody was dead from below the heart. Like the chakras didn't exist. Your sensuality was not something that was important. Like it was all like we're supposed to be aspiring for God, but they forgot that the body houses the spirit. It is the host of the spirit. And I often tell people, when I first started my journey, people would say, your body is your temple. And although I understood it consciously, I didn't get it, because it was like, yeah, you know. And then one day I was actually doing a reading for a lady, and I said, well, your body is like a host. Now, I've read enough science fiction books that made sense to me. And I got it for the first time of all these years of whatever, listening to all, I got it. Yes, my body is the host of me. So I better respect this host.
Yeah.
And what I need to do to have it to be the best vehicle it can be, because like everybody else, I haven't always been treating it with care over the years. So really learning about that.
But that's part of the to understand. I mean, what I'm hoping to, my intention, I guess you could say, behind what I do is to get people to know that there is another way of looking at this life experience, and that with a greater understanding we can have an exquisite world. That's kind of my thing. So, but I guess I'm really I want to make a bridge between what's been happening. There's this movement of metaphysical and new understandings like quantum energy and getting the metaphysical teachings, but it still is a bit separate. There's people that are, they're interested in that, and then you have the other people that are saying, yeah, that's all woo-woo, and we're over here living our lives. But I feel like it's starting to come together, that people are starting to see that, yes, the practical day-to-day put food on the table thing is still going to happen because we're in physical, but it could be easier if we came to, like, no judgment, if we could get the understanding and then apply it in our practical lives.
Totally.
And that's where what I'm seeing is people are seeking, and then they find someone who has a little bit more maybe understanding than they do, but they don't do the work. They want it to be easy, and I guess that's what I'm asking you. You've been on this journey a long time. You're still working on your stuff. Probably not to the degree you were 30 years ago, but so how do we say this to people to get them to understand it's hard work in a way, and yet it's not work, it's fun, it's play, and your life can be so much better if you do your work?
I think it's about commitment. I think it's about what you're really committed to doing. If you're committed to becoming more peaceful or more contented or more having things in your life work easier, then you're going to do the work. And the work takes commitment. Like right now, I'm just finishing up teaching an 8-week tarot class. Now those guys have to do homework every night, or pretty well, and because if they don't do it, they're not going to get it. And it may happen they go through the whole 8 weeks showing up to class and only doing a little bit through the week, but they're going to miss it, and that's their loss, no one else's. So it's about commitment, and it could be anywhere. It's if you want to do a job well in your work, you're committed to those hours that you work there to do the best that you can. So what you're doing is like, I get a lot of people saying, I hate my job, and I tell blah, blah, blah. It goes on like that, right?
Yeah.
And I say, well, how about shifting into being grateful for your job, that you have the money so you can come and take my workshops or come and see me or whatever, or take a trip that you want to take. Like, shift that around, because you're going to need to work. And if you're not working, and a lot of people come and they say, well, I can't leave this job because it's paying too much. So it's like, change your attitude. Be grateful that you're getting this paycheck. And some people do come back and thank me and say, I changed that and it made a huge difference.
Yeah.
But what's the quality of the difference? They still have to go to work and put those hours in. They still are in the same environment. It's how you perceive it. So it's about perception of it.
Okay, let me ask you this. I and many people have a vision for a peaceful planet, living on the earth in peace.
Right.
Can we get there if we don't do this work? I guess that there's certain people on the planet who I feel like they just don't, that's not why they came. They don't want to do the spiritual work. So is creating that exquisite world that I keep talking about is
idealistic world, right?
Yeah,
but it's an idealistic viewpoint, but I think you're forgetting what the importance of this planet is.
Okay.
This planet is all about balancing your emotional and mental. Therefore, it's not always about living peacefully, because until you can create a peacefulness between your mental and your emotional selves, and you get those two aligned, you're not going to find too much peace on the outside, really.
Okay, so, but then that brings me back to the question. If people don't, okay, if I do my work, I'm going to have a peaceful world. Yes. And regardless of the rest.
Yeah, you'll create around you, except you're still we still have to deal with the outside world coming in. But that's where how you handle it is important. How you handle those events that come in, right? That's where your important element, that's where your growth comes in. How big of heart are you? How understanding are you? How much are you growing in relation to those events that you wish were not taking place? And being able to move out of the judgments that most of us we live in all the time. So it's really about being able to apply spiritual principle to a bigger picture. First of all, you start with yourself, you start with your family, your environment, and then you grow out. We don't tend to start with the world. We start where we're at.
And so, but this world, this third dimensional Earth, is always going to have conflict, or always going to have, or am I being way too?
I think that until you get a populace that is in single-mindedness, that you will have conflict. But conflict doesn't have to be bad. I know I was raised, you don't create conflict because it's quote-unquote bad. I don't know that it's bad to have conflict. We don't want to be living in a dictatorship where we all have to do as we're told. We're lucky in the West, we have a lot of room to move in. Where in some other cultures there isn't too much room to move in, unfortunately. I do think if you look through history, I think the key is really basically historical. When you look at society and how it's progressed, we have had many societies, I know through past life regression, that we have no evidence of at this time where people did live very peacefully, and they lived in accord, and they lived well. And though they rose and they fell, and it's happened more than once or twice. And we forget that. We forget that we're on a precipice of a great change. Now, whether it come through natural disaster, whether it comes through man-made disaster, whether it comes from some asteroid hitting us, we do not know. Because all we can do is be in the moment and be prepared to be able to deal with anything that comes up in an effective way. We know when we get in nature. I just follow the summer around here. I was saying to someone, I always notice that, like one year we may have a lot of wasps, and next year there's hardly any wasps. And it may take another 7 or 8 years before the wasps seem to grow back. And every year there's another abundance. Last year it was spiders. We had spiders everywhere around here. The year before was dandy long-legged things. What happens to that? It's almost like we reach a maturation point and then we come back. And I know that has happened in our societies here. I know that's happened before, where we can go back in past lives to Grecian, to Egyptian, and even previously before that, where there were some societies that were in Atlantean times, and Lemuria, where there were tremendously evolved places, but they didn't stay. They got confused between the mental and the emotional. So anytime something gets out of balance, and we know that the body anyway works, and the earth does too, works to strike balance. So I don't credit the earth enough. I really don't think we give earth the credit that is necessary.
But so then, would you say our purpose for being here then is, I guess I'm thinking I'm thinking
all right.
Well, I'm thinking this, what is the value then in doing, I know what it is for me, but collectively, as we're on this more awakening cycle, learning and finding out about that, oh, well, we're more than we thought we were, what would be the reason for us to do it? Is it totally then for our own, to make our journey easier, to make it, I mean, or is it part of, we're each a piece of this collective and so we have our role, or is it really a selfish thing?
It's all of it. It's all of the above. If, like me as a reincarnationist, to get off the wheel of life, we have to be able to work and be with any feeling at all without judgment. To be separated from that, not from separation of denial, but inclusion of knowing this feeling just says this. And there's no judgment of what feeling it is, because this is a feeling planet. That's why people get sent here. I think I've talked to you before about how people get sent here. And I had, actually this weekend, I had someone come who does a different type of procedure that I know. And she said to me, we're running into these people that they come here, they're sent here. And I said, oh, let me tell you. So I sat down and I talked to her about what I discovered. And she said, oh, thank you. And we talked about how
I don't think you did talk to me about that. Can you?
What I found was that just as the British used to send people to the States and to Australia way back for stealing a loaf of bread, well, other planets or dimensions or whatever you want to call it, but planets in particular, if you've been a rebel in that society, get sent here a lot. You'd be surprised how many people who come in here, souls angry at whatever, abandonment, feeling like they weren't heard, etc., and they come in with that. That's why I'm so interested in soul work these days. That's why I'm working more and more to work with people in their souls so that we can clear all this stuff, so that it gives them a chance here. Very often there's a contract, like when you might have agreed to come here and look at what's going on in the world and send information back to wherever you were, and you had a contract for so many years, but because time goes on and then you get caught up in the emotionality here, you forget what your job was, and your contract, which was long null and voided, it just keeps running. So it's like a contract you don't even know you have. It's fascinating work to actually get in there and figure out.
Well, is that why some people say, I don't feel like I belong here, or I'm angry because I feel like I've been angry ever since? It's because they actually were sent, as opposed to somebody who feels like, wow, I'm so happy to be here and this is so much fun?
Yeah, most people don't think I'm happy to be here and this is so much fun. They sometimes come from curiosity and get stuck here. That happens. I had one person who came in a space. This was an interesting one. Came as a spaceship, and they walked the Earth. Now I take it when they didn't walk the Earth in physical form, they were in but walked around for 2.5 years. They went back to their spaceship. There was I think 5 of them. They went back to their spaceship, and their spaceship wouldn't work, and they were stuck here.
Oh.
Yeah. And one of the things I remember saying to my client, because I said, do you feel like you don't belong here, like you're not? And she said, oh yeah. And it just explained so many things in her life, how she related to her life, because it was like this, you just have to accept your fate, right? So instead of being like invisible, like we would think of people who have departed us and know they're on another level, they all of a sudden had to get themselves reincarnated. And also I had done a past life regression in Vancouver a few years ago, and one of the guys went into future, and he said, I was on a spaceship that crashed and I had to then reassimilate here, because we forget time is not linear like we tend to think of it. And he was talking about we're in 3000 and something when he first came. It was like there's such I get so excited to get so excited, but I get fascinated.
But I mean, Norma, I am too, but I mean, when I think about what you just said, if I stop and think, if I, just listen, it feels like a natural story. But when I stop and think about it, we're talking about 2013, and we're actually having this conversation, and it's, going to be aired to the public. And neither one of us are certifiably insane, so
I am totally not insane. That's the thing, is right. But you see, and I always walked on that fringe, like you know, and I always dressed normally. And I can tell you
I
stories.
always dress normally.
I started showing up at radio stations. People would say to me, "But you look normal," and I said, "But I am normal." All psychic. We're all. I just have to do this, you know. And there were several of us in Vancouver that were on a radio station. There was 3 of us in particular that were wives and mothers, and we kind of made a pact that we would make it look very regular out there. And we're still working in the field. We still do stuff. We still look regular, you know.
I saw a little poster about that the other day. It said, "I tried normal for about 10 minutes, but I didn't like it."
I've tried it many times. It gets very boring, I tell you. And now when someone comes along and says, "You look like you've got spunk," I went, yes, I can handle that.
Yeah, spunk, for sure. Well, I mean, I think that what's really I'm amazed at is that I'm amazed that we're here at this place, at this, and having these kinds of discussions, and that something that, you know, I feel like since I was a little girl, I've been having these questions and had no one to ask them to, really. I didn't even know I had the questions most of the time. But now it feels like, you know, I'm going to just call it Philosophy 2013, because that's what it feels like. It's like a whole bigger understanding of life and all the different components, like metaphysical, physical, bringing it together and into living differently. And I guess that's really what I'm seeing, is that we're at a choice point, or we have been for some time, each of us.
I think the choice point is gone. I think now it's like the boat has left that shoreline. It's maybe not at the other shoreline yet.
Okay.
But the boat is left, and you either come onto the boat and travel into that new awareness. When you were talking about the ultimate of us all living in peace and harmony, I really believe it's an individual challenge. It is not something that's going to come in and the sky's going to go all green and all of a sudden we're all going to feel peaceful and harmony. I really do believe that it's our own inner fight within ourselves that brings it into harmony, where we accept our feelings as ours and learn what our body's teaching us, that we honor the earth for what it is doing by putting up with us. and I will say this, my connection to the earth is that it loves us and it is not concerned over what it sees and perceives us doing, because it will take care of anything that we create, for sure. Yeah. And I've always known that. At the same time, to know that the soul that inhabits this body also needs to have that peaceful understanding of direction, that we manifest our individuality. You see, that's what I find sometimes in spiritual beings, that they get so, I use the word pious, I hadn't thought of that, but they get so into, oh, I've got to be spiritual, I've got to be connected, they forget their uniqueness. We are all built with our fingerprints different for a reason, because we're all unique and different and special. And although you might run into someone who looks like you or acts a little like you or whatever, you are still unique and special, and I think we need to really manifest that into the world. And I've spent a lot of time when I haven't done that, and I've been miserable, to be honest, because, yeah, I think when we are in the flow of everything, that manifestation is creativity, and life works for you, and it comes back and brings back such delight in life. And the more people that are in that, they're without judgment, living as wonderfully as they can in their circumstances, you will find a peaceful place and a world. And that I do believe in the collective consciousness, and the more that those of us that hold those thoughts, man, I remember when I used to talk about past lives and I was like a voice in the wilderness. When I started talking about how we froze inwardly, as I call the inner frozen children, I was a voice in the wilderness. I remember saying all sorts of things as I would learn more, like, hey, we can actually transform all this quickly and easily. And now all of that stuff is all caught up. So where am I going now? I don't know, except my interest in souls has become even more. So maybe that's my next step.
But it feels, you know, I really get that for me, this desire that I've had for creating an exquisite world, living in harmony, living in peace, I feel like it's more about, I want fun people to play with.
Right.
I think that's what I want to laugh more. I want to enjoy life more, and I think I found that there was just such a darkness in, when I got into politics, that's where I really noticed it, like, and got out of it. But what I've noticed now is that I'm so enjoying life. I'm so enjoying that it's fun, that more people want to have fun, want to have the discussions, want to laugh at ourselves.
Totally.
That we have more of that. So, you do a lot of different kinds of work, and I guess the way I see what you do is you're the ultimate in peeling the onion. It's like you have all these different tools to help people to go through the different things. And I guess what I'm asking you is, why is there so much stuff? Is it because we've lived so many lifetimes? Is it because we held on to so many? Like, why isn't it just like people can say, I want different, choose different, snap your fingers, it's gone? Why do we have to?
Because of the subconscious, which no one refers to anymore. The subconscious houses it all. So when you change things like throughout, like your affirmations, or if you just want, I'm going to think differently. But if it reminds me of the biblical saying that unless you build on rock, you'll fail. You'll fail. Because what's on your bedrock? What are those basic belief systems that you have, whether you've done it past life after past life, which I believe, or if you've done it even just in this life, wherever they've come from, whether they've come from your family or your pastor or whoever.
Yeah.
Are those beliefs really working for you? Are they really there? Are they really contributing to you or not? And that's what I think we individually have to do. So it's not about, yes, we need to clean up this. And that's how I learn when you talk about practical experience. I was in the middle of saying, and I'll just finish that off, because it was like, I realized my consciousness was like a pea. And this is what drives your life. This is like the wheel that's taking it. That you can see the subconscious is like your engine in a vehicle, but your consciousness does the driving. And then I went, oh my goodness, I've got to get this consciousness in balance with my subconscious. And so that's what I ended up working on. And what I've done over the years is to create a balance. So the dance is to ensure that the subconscious is giving the energy to where the consciousness wants to go. And that's where I learned not to worry, like what worry is, how thoughts work. I began to then get into all of that and how to change thinking, how to work with the feelings, and which I'm still working on a little bit. So,
but I think a lot of people don't realize that, first of all, half of us mostly we don't know what's in our subconscious. We don't realize we're acting out of like an automatic pilot, that we have cell memory, that we hold the memories from other lifetimes, or like you say, the frozen child, or like a lot of us, we don't understand it, or society hasn't, you look at somebody who's going through a difficult time, you hear parents say it to their kids, just smarten up. Or you hear, somebody got a sibling and you say, oh, they're always like that, and I think what you speak to in the work that you've done and the levels of work you've done really speaks to how complicated, or maybe that's not the right word, but how deep we are, how big we are, how much we have to,
because really, Catherine, it's simple. It's very simple. I think we like to make it complicated. Okay. I think if we understand how everything interrelates, and I like to think my philosophies that I teach, people say they're easily understood, which is great. I think because if it gets too complicated, something's not right. Because if you look at, I'm in the end of winter. Well, hopefully end of winter pretty soon here, and my lilac tree is beginning to bud. Now who knows how that happens? They just know when to start budding, and come April, I'll have lots of lilacs out there. So it's like our lives are simple, but we complicate them because we're looking for everything to be hard and difficult. Now, I often say to people too, I came from the school of thought because I did all my work. I figured everybody had to do their work. Then I was instructed, you might say, led, shown, whatever word you want to use, how I could help a person clear a lot of stuff very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to deal with that because my belief system was, you're supposed to do the work to really understand it. So, but I realized because everything is speeding up now, and I remember my teacher saying to me, I'm teaching you guys what took me 10 years to learn, you're getting in a year. Mm-hmm. Now, I tell my students, I'm giving you 30 years in a year, you know, like quicker. Like it's amazing how all these things come together.
I want to tell you something too, Norma, that I find really interesting. That when we started this conversation, the visual of you was really, really clear. And it's really clear right now. But when you get into your space, it's like this. When your hand goes like this, there's energy flies over. And no, it's amazing to watch. I find it fascinating. And I just want to share it because when people are watching, it's not the connection. Because I've done work with you in private and I've seen the same thing. It's like, you can actually, it's like seeing auras, but you see the energy. The camera picks up the energy in the room, and it's fascinating.
I get excited, and I talk with my hands, and I forget that it's visual, and I'm supposed to keep my hand. I learned to keep my hands down when I did a lot of TV work, because my instinct is go like this, and I put your hand and go, no. But I get excited about these topics, you know, because here I am, approaching 70, and I'm still excited about what we as humans come from, what we can do, how we can create a life full of everything that we want.
I know, and it just gets more exciting every day, and that's what I love about what you're doing. Now, I want to ask you if there's anything else that you think would be really a message you've been wanting to get out to the public.
The single biggest message is that you are more than you appear. You are much more than what you think you are. That you cannot think big enough or know that you can create more than enough. It's probably the same story that many of us say, but that spirit that is inside is not inhibited by this body that we're in. There is nothing to inhibit it. The sky's the limit. It's just we restrict ourselves.
And one other thing, Norma, would you, if I came to you, how would I know which particular, you have so many different modalities and things that help. How would I know which one or which ones are would help me?
Well, actually, I tend to really do two, mostly. Okay. One is using my tarot to do readings for you to find out what needs to be shifted or changed, or where you need to concentrate on, and to help you understand your lives a bit. And I do that. And the second thing I do is my clearing work, where when you've decided whether it's to have your soul become whole and complete, whether it's to do now the soul origins to see where exactly the souls come from, or whether it's because you want to be more productive. I've been recently working with a group of people from a network company, clearing out some of their misbeliefs of themselves and stuff like that, so they can begin to create within their business. So I do a lot of that work. So between the two basic things, like my past life regression work, I really do mostly as workshops rather than private, because I really don't like. I don't like doing them over the phone or anything. I only ever do those in personal, if they're personal. But I prefer to do it in the workshops and get people aware, and then they can go on from there where they can know how to do it. And I'm actually in the end of May going to be doing a whole weekend of teaching people how to be a past life regressionist. And that's where I think I'm moving towards, is how to teach the teachers now, or the facilitators. I want to really do that. I want to get them an expert at all these modalities that I do know that incorporate my basic system, I guess you could say. But today I basically use two modes. One is reading and one is clearing.
That's fantastic.
And clear it so that you can create more. Get those blocks out of the way.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been fantastic, and I so appreciate you taking the time to share all of this with Let's Get Real chatting with Catherine.
Take care.
Isn't
that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.